Well, this person was watching Quick Tip 123. We did that long time ago, 8 years ago, I think, and said, by the way, that quick tip I did in orals, as I usually do most of these quick tips. But this person said, would it be possible for you to do the dappled light in watercolor? Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. Well, I went over to Pixabay as I usually do for these quick tabs, especially if I can't find in my own collection images that might work for the request. And I found this photo of Dappled Light, and I thought, well, that may be a good one to use. Well, then the question is, which watercolor technique do we use for this? Now, watercolor is a medium that has so many possibilities, a whole bunch of techniques. And so there really is no one way of doing something the best. But I thought I'd show you a fun way that we can do dappled light with watercolor. So I want to show you a little practice exercise first. Every one of those watercolor techniques, as all techniques do, requires some practicing to get to know the feel of how the brush is working and how the paint's working and that sort of thing. Now, there is a technique that we call, or there's a term we use called the thirsty brush. And what that means is that instead of the brush being wet, we wet the brush and then we squeeze all the water out of it, and we call that thirsty. That's the thirsty brush. So what we can do with a thirsty brush, several things you can do with it, but what I want to show you right now, I'm just going to show you the little technique that I want to use for this, but show you how to practice it. So first of all, you'll want to bring your color out on the palette. Put this aside. And this is all in neutrals. So when something's in neutrals, I like to pull out at least two colors on the palette that are complements of each other. And I think blue and orange might be a good one. A good pair for that sort of neutral. So I have ultramarine blue, and I'd like to use ultramarine blue in watercolor. I have I have three blues on my palette, but really I have four actually, but I really don't use the cobalt or the cerulean very much at all. I like the ultramarine because it's non-staining. It does do some granulation. It's where the colors kind of dry, slightly separated, but that can be very useful. So I'm going to pull a good bit of that out here now. And the other blue I have on the palette is Antwerp blue, but that's a blue that leans towards green, and I didn't want that for this. So I don't want it to lean towards green. It's not use the Antwerp blue. Now I don't use phthalo blue because it's so staining. But the Antwerp is about the same hue as phthalo. So what I'll do is for my complement, instead of reaching for that just plain orange or pure orange, I'm going to go for a dark transparent because this is dark, made of shadows and lights. Dappled light is. So I'll go over into my, this is quinacridone burnt orange made by Daniel Smith. Quinacridone burnt orange. It is an orange that leans towards red, very slightly. It's desaturated a little bit, and that makes a really good mixture or complement to use with blue for creating neutrals. I'm going to pull a good bit of that out here now and rinse the brush off. Now, I always like to add, when I'm doing a neutral like that, I always like to add a little bit of red here. Actually, it's red violet. I like to add just a little bit right beside the red orange, so we get a little variation in hue. I'll just put that right. I started to put it right there. I'll put it right over here, right beside that. Just a little bit of that. Now, what I want to show you first of all is the technique. And so to do that, I'm going to mix these two together. Now with watercolor, well, actually with oil paint as well, but we'll do this a little different in watercolor. It's better to get those colors, at least know what you're going to need for the color that you're mixing, and pull it together on the palette. Now sometimes we will pull it together in the brush and let it do the mixing here, but we want to be sure that we have the right colors, the colors that we want. You see, that gives us a very nice, we can have it a warm, see, this is warmer with a little bit more of the red orange in it. So we could have it as a warm neutral, or we could put a little bit more blue like this, see? And we could have a cool neutral, or we could have a neutral that is leaning both ways, warm and cool, which I kind of like. So here's the technique. Now I'll do this. I'll just do the technique for you first, and then I'll show you just a little bit of how we could do that with if you're doing painting. So first of all, notice that this is light and shadow, and notice the value difference. There's, what would you say? That's a middle, that shadow is about a middle value shadow, and the light is a very light value light. So you can see that's pretty contrasty right there. The shadow is probably a little darker than we actually see it if we were there. So any shadow that the color that we put down that feels a little bit more like middle value will probably work. So I'm just going to do a little swatch here, and I'm going to give that just a little bit of variation in warm and cool. Not that it matters, just do this little swatch for you right here. Now, here comes the fun part. And now I'm going with the thirsty brush. When you first make these swatches of color in watercolor, it's going to be very, very glossy. We can do certain things in it while it's in these various degrees of wetness. Now with a thirsty brush, watch what I can do while this is still wet. I can reach that brush in there and I can pull that light out. And you can see what happens when I do that is that the water creeps back in here, and that will form a shape. And that shape, if it's still very wet, like it is here where it's very glossy, that shape will then, the color will start bleeding to the edges of that shape. So I will set the brush back in it again, and that softens those edges. So you can do that sort of thing. Now when you're working on the watercolor papers that allow you to lift out, you can use that lift out with a thirsty brush for quite a while you're working. So you see this over here, it's already beginning to dry a little bit. So I can roll that brush in my hand as I pull it and shape those kinds of lights that I want to come out from around that shadow area. And I can go back and soften edges where I've already pulled it out. So you see, that's how the technique works. That requires a little bit of practice because, first of all, the brush has got to be absolutely thirsty, which means you wet it and then you pull all the water out. If you don't pull all the water out, let me show you what happens. You put that back in, and that causes what we call back run. That pushes the paint back, and it creates these little patterns of little ragged patterns around the shape. If you don't want that, that can be kind of a downfall of a painting. So this is the technique. Now, if you'll notice in these light patterns that we see where the light is dappled, it's the light coming through the trees, the limbs and leaves of the trees that are coming through, trees casting shadow, and the light's coming through. That's what causes the dappled light. If you look real close at that dappled light, you'll see that those edges are not sharp. And usually they aren't. Usually the edges of a dappled light are blurred. And so we use techniques in all paints that will enable that kind of blur. Now I'm going to do just a little bit of work right over here to show you how we might do that, that we might approach that in creating a watercolor painting. And so I'm going to dampen the paper just a little bit with my spray bottle, and then I'm going to even that water out, not have it too wet. I don't want that too wet because I'm going to be adding more wet to it when I put the wash on. Now I'm going in with a different brush and go back over to my mixture here, and there, back in watercolor, the more you stir in the mixture here, the duller it gets. So one of the ways that we can keep nice, bright, crisp color in watercolor is to not do very much stirring here, because it doesn't take much pulling of the paint together to create a new color. You see? Now let's see, do we want that cool or warm? You can choose whether you want it cool or warm. And I'm going to make that one probably maybe just a little bit lighter than the other one. It's going to be a little lighter anyway. But you see, the more I piddle over there in it, the more uniform it gets. And so if you want your color to have a little more variation in it, you won't do that. And this is damp, so I'm going to go now and stroke across here like this. Now we would do this for this technique. We would lay our wash throughout the whole area onto which the shadow's being cast. And then there are several kinds of thirsty brush techniques that we can use. Now you can use a flat brush. I'll start that first. But first we wet the brush. Then we squeeze out all the water and keep the shape of the brush. And I'm going to turn this way so I have a little bit more control. Now it's a little bit too wet, but I'll go ahead with this brush. Now watch what happens. The brush just pulls the paint right up, and we can create a shape. And we can use our reference as a guide as to how we want that shape to appear. Whether we want the shape to be a wider and rounder shape, such as this would be, or whether we want it to have more of an edge to it. And now we can go back. We do need to rinse that brush off periodically and squeeze the water out of it. But we can go back where we've already been and pull out more light. You see there? Like that. And let me see if I can get something of a... Now, look, if you keep an eye on what's happening here, you have a lot of dapple right in there. And so, pull the water out. So I can look at the pattern of that dapple, and I can begin to lift it out with the brush. Blot the brush almost each time after lifting out, if you want those dapples to be nice and clean. Now I can reach back in if I want more light to show. But you see what's happening now? It's creating that nice little soft edge because all that is still damp, the color. And I want you to notice, see how the ultramarine blue is beginning to kind of give us that little crackle. It's almost a little vibration of color that's going on there. Now I'll go to a smaller brush that's flat. Let's go to a smaller brush that's round rather than flat and show you. Again, always wet the brush, pull it out thoroughly. You have a good bit of time to work on this while it's still damp. You see what the round brush does? With the round brush, what I like to do if I want a really long one, I just rotate the brush in my hand as I pull it out. You see how that does? What that does? It gives us that, and then you can sort of create little patterns, sort of like these little patterns over here, just by doing that sort of thing where you're watching the shape you're making and how much water, how much color you're lifting out. And sometimes we'll see those little dapples connecting together. So you can really form your pattern. You can form your pattern according to what you want it to be. It's a good idea to refer back to the reference occasionally, so that you can see what the pattern is. But what we usually do with a reference like that is we get the general pattern of the reference, and rather than try to make it just exactly like we see it, we look for the pattern, such as I'm doing right here. You see what I'm doing here? I'm just rotating this in my hand, rotating the brush in my hand as I go up. Here's what I'm doing here. Watch this. Roll this, and I'm going to pull it up at a diagonal and push it back and forth like that. And if it's good and thirsty, you see what happens there? So we get these nice little dappled, feeling of dappled light. Of course, the pattern that we form at the end of the dapples will oftentimes indicate what's causing that shadow. But if you follow the general pattern, rather than trying to make it look just like the thing itself, then you get that dappled. You will get the feeling of the dappled light. And if people ask you how did you do that, don't tell them. You can tell them all you want to. It's up to you. All right, so you get the idea there now. And you can see how you might even apply that to other images that you're working with. But remember, don't get disheartened. And let me remind you that it's the thirsty brush that does the work. If we have once we put our color down here, we keep an eye on the color. It's going to be glossy at first. The gloss is going to gradually disappear, and it's going to stay damp for quite a while before it really gets dry. Now, once it gets really, really dry, on some watercolor papers, you can lift it out after it's really, really dry. On some, you can't. Now, so I won't name them because there are various ones that are available, and I don't even know them all. Okay, this is getting, let's see, that's pretty damp still. Let's see how about this one I put on earlier. Let's show you what I'm talking about there. So with the flat brush. Now, usually, once the paper has gotten very dry, the brush that you use to lift out will need to be a little stiffer. And you'll need to kind of work it a little bit more. So let's just see what this does. Now let's just use, oh yeah, it still pulls out very well. But this is a paper this is a Waterford I'm working on here. And it is sized so that it allows us to lift out after the fact. Let's see, we can do that kind of lifting out there. So you'll discover as you're working, as you learn how to do this, you'll discover that there various times when you want to let it dry thoroughly and then lift out dry, and other times when you want to lift out as it is drying. So if you give that a try, play with it, I think you'll find it's a lot of fun. Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.